On the night of June 5, 2002, a man was found dead, face down over the arm of a couch in a Hollywood apartment. He was 50 years old. A syringe on the counter, a spoon, 5 balloons, 1 torn open. 11 weeks earlier, that same man had been told he was immortal. His band helped invent punk rock. They never cracked the US top 40. Their first album sold 6,000 copies in its first year. Decades later, that same album went gold. He wrote songs that sounded stupid on purpose, until you heard the sickness and boredom and damage hiding inside them. He helped build the Ramones, then tried to escape them by becoming a rapper named Dee Dee King. That record vanished almost overnight. And then, in 2002, the band walked into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And when Dee Dee stepped up to the microphone, he said something nobody in that room ever forgot. The 6,000 copies are real. The gold record is real. The Hall of Fame speech is real. And the syringe in that Hollywood apartment is real. How does a man build a machine that made millions of people happy, and never once figure out how to climb inside it? This is the real story of Douglas Glenn Colvin. The world knew him as Dee Dee Ramone. Stay to the end, because his story does not end at that couch. It ends with 4 words carved into his headstone. 1. The boy with no country. Douglas Glenn Colvin came into the world on an army base in Fort Lee, Virginia, on September 18, 1951. His father was an American soldier, his mother a German woman from Berlin. And almost as soon as he was born, the family packed up and shipped out, because that is what army families do. Munich, Bad Tolz, Pirmasens, Berlin. The names changed, but the story never did. Every new town meant a new school and a fresh set of kids who already had their friends. And then the orders would come, and he would do it all over again. He grew up speaking fluent German in a country that was not his, carrying a last name that did not come from there, belonging nowhere at all. Think about what that does to a kid. No roots, no best friend down the street, a father who drank, and a marriage coming apart at the seams. By his own account, home was not a safe place, and so he learned early how to be alone, because being alone was the one constant he could count on. When he was about 15, his parents split for good. His mother took him and his sister Beverly and left Germany behind for a small apartment in Forest Hills, Queens. They were not chasing the American dream. They were running from his father. So picture him, a lonely teenager who barely fit in over there, dropped into New York, where he fit in even less. What he did not know yet was that 2 streets over lived a couple of other misfits who felt exactly the same way. 2, 3 outcasts and a hotel alias. In Forest Hills, he found the other broken kids. A loud, opinionated boy named John Cummings, a strange and gentle giant named Jeffrey Hyman, a sharp kid named Thomas Erdely. None of them were the popular ones, and that was the whole point. They found each other because nobody else wanted them. By this time, drugs had already found Dee Dee. Heroin came into his life as a teenager and never fully let go. And to feed it, he did things he would spend the rest of his life refusing to talk about. Hold on to that, because he wrote one of his most famous songs about it. In 1974, John talked Dee Dee into starting a band. Not a good band. A fast, loud, stupid, perfect band. Dee Dee wanted to sing and play guitar, but the friend they hired on bass could not actually play, so Dee Dee picked it up instead. Then he tried singing lead, and found his voice shredded raw after just a few songs, which is how the gentle giant, Jeffrey, ended up as the singer. The name was all Dee Dee. He had read somewhere that Paul McCartney used to check into hotels under a fake name, Paul Ramone, so nobody would bother him, and Dee Dee loved the idea. A secret identity, a way to be somebody else. So all 4 took the same fake last name, like brothers who were not brothers. John became Johnny, Jeffrey became Joey, Thomas became Tommy, and Douglas Colvin, the boy with no country, finally became somebody. He became Dee Dee Ramone. There was one habit he carried out of those early days. Before every song, he would lean into the mic and shout it, fast and sharp. 1, 2, 3, 4. For the next 22 years, that count was the sound of the party starting, and nobody in the crowd ever guessed how little the man shouting it wanted to be there. 3. The corner he took to his grave. Here is the thing about Dee Dee that made him special. and that made him suffer. He did not make up his songs. He bled them. Almost every Ramones song you love came from him. The credits were split evenly across all four, but Dee Dee was the engine, and he wrote about what actually happened to him. What happened to him was dark. Take one of the band's most infamous songs, named after a real corner in Manhattan, 53rd and 3rd. Back then, that corner was a known spot where young men sold themselves to older men for cash. The song rides shotgun with one of those hustlers, a man nobody picks, who finally does something terrible just to prove he is tough. For years, people whispered that the song was really about Dee Dee, that before the band, to feed the heroin, he had stood on that corner himself. A journalist said it plainly. Friends hinted at it. And Dee Dee? When a film crew put the question to him years later, he went quiet and said he would like to, in his words, bypass that. Everyone blows up the negative, he told them. He never confirmed it, and he never denied it. What he did instead was turn the worst chapter of his life into 2 minutes of joyful, screaming noise, hand it to the crowd, and let them bounce up and down to it without ever knowing what it cost him. That was the deal Dee Dee made over and over. He gave away his pain as a party, and he kept the receipt to himself. 4. The band that conquered everything except the charts. They recorded their first album in early 1976. It cost almost nothing, and it sounded like nothing else on earth. That summer, on the 4th of July, the Ramones flew to England for a handful of shows. Sitting in those crowds were the kids who would soon form the Sex Pistols and the Clash. They watched 4 guys in leather jackets play fast, simple, furious songs anyone could learn, and they went home and started a revolution. Punk rock, as the world came to know it, caught fire because the Ramones held the match. Here is the part that should stop you cold. For all that influence, the Ramones almost never had a hit. That first album, the one that lit the fuse, sold around 6,000 copies in its first year and stalled at number 111 on the charts. They had invented a sound that would reshape music for the next 50 years, and they watched the very bands they inspired sell millions while they scraped by in a van. It would take 38 years for that debut to finally go gold, and by then, Dee Dee was long gone. And for Dee Dee, the prison was not the failure. The prison was the band itself. 5. The uniform. From the outside, the Ramones were pure fun. The leather jackets, the ripped jeans, the bowl haircuts, the cartoon logo shaped like a presidential seal, designed by their friend Arturo Vega, a man Dee Dee had met years earlier working a printing job. From the inside, Dee Dee felt like he was suffocating. In his memoirs, he described the band as something close to a fascist operation. Everyone dressed the same, everyone behaved the same, the image was locked, the set was locked, the rules were absolute. The band the whole world saw as freedom felt, to him, like a cage with a dress code. And the touring never stopped. Night after night, town after town, the same songs, the same jacket, the same count. 1, 2, 3, 4. For a man fighting heroin, life on the road was a loaded gun that never left the room. He could not get clean inside that machine, and the machine would not let him try. On any given night, in a club full of people losing their minds with joy, Dee Dee Ramone might have been the single most miserable person in the building. The adoration poured in, and somewhere inside him it curdled. By the end of the 1980s, he could not take it anymore. He was going to walk away from the only thing that ever made him somebody, and the way he chose to do it would become one of the strangest left turns in rock history. 6. Dee Dee King, the rapper. In 1989, Dee Dee Ramone quit the band and reinvented himself as a rapper. Yes, really. He called himself Dee Dee King, a tip of the hat to B.B. King, and put out an album, Standing in the Spotlight. To his bandmates, it was a horror. To most fans, an embarrassment. One critic ranked it among the worst recordings ever made, and despite cameos from real stars, it sank without a trace. But sit with why he did it. Not because he believed he would be a great rapper. He did it because he was desperate to be something other than a Ramone. 15 years as a uniform had worn him down, and he wanted, just once, to grow into someone new. He reached for a different life, and reached in the one direction nobody could follow. And the deepest irony of his whole career is this. He left the band, but he could not stop writing their songs. Even after he was gone, he kept handing the Ramones the best material they had. They once bailed him out of jail, and in exchange, he signed over the rights to 3 songs, one of which became one of the most beautiful things he ever wrote, Poison Heart. Free of the band, and still chained to it. Gone, and still feeding it. Always halfway out the door. Always looking back. 7. Clean and sober. Here is where the story turns, and where it starts to break your heart on purpose. In the early 1990s, Dee Dee got clean. The thing that had haunted him since he was a teenager. The thing on that street corner. The thing buried in those songs. He finally got his hands around its throat. He started showing up at recovery meetings. He met a young woman named Barbara, who would become his wife. He moved to California, and he started over, the way he always did. He played small clubs. He took up painting and sold hundreds of pieces. He wrote books, among them a brutal autobiography about surviving the band. For the first time in his life, the man with no country seemed to be building one of his own, and people who saw him in those years described someone who finally looked like he might make it. Which is what makes the next part so hard. Just as he was turning his life around, the same people who built the cage he hated were about to hand him the greatest gift, and the cruelest one, of his entire life. 8. The night he thanked himself. In 2002, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame finally opened its doors to the Ramones. Their first year of eligibility. The band that never had a hit, the band that scraped by while their imitators got rich, was being told at last that they were immortal. There was an empty space where one of them should have stood. Joey Ramone, the gentle giant, the singer, had died of cancer just over a year earlier. The clock was already running on all of them, though nobody in that room knew how fast. And then Dee Dee walked up to the microphone to accept the honor. The most influential punk songwriter alive, standing in front of the industry that had ignored him for 25 years. Here is what he said. He looked out at the crowd, and he thanked himself. His words were, "I would like to congratulate myself, and thank myself, and give myself a big pat on the back." Then he said, "Thank you, Dee Dee. You're very wonderful." The room laughed. It was perfect. It was funny. It was the loneliest sentence a man ever spoke into a microphone. Because think about who actually said it. The boy with no country, who learned as a child that the only person he could count on was himself. The man who gave away every ounce of his pain as a party and kept the receipt. Standing at the summit of his entire life, handed the recognition he had been denied for a quarter of a century. And the only person he could think to thank, the only one he was sure had always been there, was himself. He spoke about the band having charmed, lucky lives. He was happy that night. By every account, at peace. He had 11 weeks left. 9. June 5th. June 5th, 2002. Hollywood, California. Barbara comes home. 8:25 in the evening. The apartment is quiet. Dee Dee is on the couch. Face down, over the arm of it. He is not moving. A syringe on the kitchen counter. A spoon. 5 small balloons near the body, and one already torn open. A single fresh needle mark on his left arm. 1. Paramedics work on him. They put a line in his arm. They put a tube down his throat. By 8:40, it is over. He is 50 years old. Months later, the coroner finishes the report. The cause is plain and undisputed. Heroin. The official word on the page is morphine intoxication. The death is ruled an accident. And here is the detail that turns a sad death into a devastating one. The report shows a body in fairly good health. No fresh tracks up and down the arms. No signs of long, heavy use. Just that one fresh mark. The picture it paints is not of a man who never stopped. It is of a man who had stopped, who had been clean, who had built a new life, and who slipped one single time. One time, after all those years. After the corner, after the songs, after the band, after getting out. He beat the thing that should have killed him at 20, at 30, at 40. And it took him anyway. Weeks after the world finally called him immortal. With one quiet mistake on an ordinary night. 10. The stone that says goodbye. They buried him at Hollywood Forever Cemetery, in a section they call the Garden of Legends. Across a small lake stands a huge bronze monument to his old bandmate Johnny, who would die 2 years later. By the time it was over, all 4 original Ramones were gone. Joey, then Dee Dee, then Johnny, then Tommy. The whole gang, reunited somewhere we cannot follow. Dee Dee's grave is simpler, a slab of black marble. At the top sits his real name, the one he carried before he became somebody. Douglas Glenn Colvin. Below it, the cartoon seal of the band he loved and hated and could never escape. And carved into the stone are words from one of his own songs, Highest Trails Above. The line reads, "I feel so safe flying on a ray on the highest trails above. The boy with no country, finally somewhere safe." But it is the last line, down at the base of the stone, that breaks people. 4 small words. The kind of thing he might have mumbled at the end of a phone call, or the end of a show, or the end of a life. Okay, I gotta go now. That is the whole of Dee Dee in 5 syllables. No drama, no self-pity, just a tired, funny, restless man who was always halfway out the door telling you he is leaving, the same way he counted off every song he ever played. Quick, casual, like it was nothing. The thing nobody tells you. So here is the thesis. The one idea this whole story comes down to. We remember the Ramones as pure fun. The leather, the haircuts, the dumb perfect choruses, the 1, 2, 3, 4. And that fun was real. It changed music forever. But it was built, song by song, by the saddest man in the room. A man who took the loneliness of a childhood with no home, the shame of a corner he would not name, and the misery of a cage he helped build, and turned all of it into something that made the rest of us happy. He spent his whole life handing his pain to strangers wrapped up as a party, and almost nobody ever unwrapped it to see what was inside. That is the tragedy of Dee Dee Ramone. Not how he died, how alone he was while he was making everyone else feel less alone. The next time one of his songs comes on and you feel that jolt of pure joy, remember the man who paid for it. Go put on 53rd and 3rd, and then put on Poison Heart. Turn it up as loud as your speakers will go. Listen to how happy it sounds. And then listen, underneath, for the lonely kid who is still in there, still counting off, still halfway out the door. If his story moved you, take a second and subscribe, because there is another legend who gave us everything and left too soon, and their story is coming next. Until then, let's drop the needle.